Blog Talk Radio.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to IHWE Radio, Wednesday night, 8 p.m. As always, I am Michael McCurdy, your host for the show, and joining me once again back at his job as co-host and the director and the Hall of Fame and all that. Instead of calling Howard Stern the king of all media, I'm going to refer to this man as the king of all social media. This man is everywhere, 24/7. I know because I see everything he posts because he tags me in it. David Fuller. David, how you doing tonight?
Oh, I'm doing all right. I appreciate that introduction. Thank you very much. I'm looking forward to a good show we have tonight.
We do have a good show lined up. For those of you who may not know, our guest tonight was I guess you could say kind of a name in the WWF back in the early 90s, I believe it was. If you ever watched the Bobby Heenan show on the USA Network, he was also with the Bushwhackers previously. I believe he also worked a little bit with Andre the Giant. We're going to talk some more about that tonight. We have Jameson on our show this evening. Should be an interesting interview. I, unfortunately, don't know a lot about Jameson. I think I'm going to learn a little bit, just like everybody else. And from what I understand, he's a pretty good guy. Should be a great interview.
Yeah, it's really cool. I was a super hardcore WWF fan, and I'm not ashamed to admit it. WWF had the superstars, and they really were a demographic for kids. And that's where Andre was, and I was enamored with Andre the Giant. So wherever Andre was, I was a fan of. I did watch Jim Crockett Promotions, and I did watch World Class Championship Wrestling because, of course, I lived in the territory. But Jameson was really cool. He just kind of showed up one day, and he was on the Bobby Heenan show. He was a sidekick, and the banter between those two was just phenomenal. It was great. Bobby was such a quick-witted guy, and but Jameson got to do some other things. He was constantly doing something, and he got to manage the Bushwhackers on a pay-per-view. I want to say it was in 1992 or 1993, he managed the Bushwhackers against the Beverly Brothers, and they had Lanny Poffo, the brother of Macho Man Randy Savage, in their corner. He was doing the Genius gimmick, and that was really cool. Jameson has always been one of my favorites because he's just a normal guy, and he played this nerdy guy, but, I mean, he really did good for what he did, and it's really cool that he got to be a part of the World Wrestling Federation. So I'm really looking forward to this. He's a really nice guy, too. So it's going to be a great interview tonight. I can't wait.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. I kind of went back a little bit and refreshed my memory on some of the stuff that he did. And, yeah, you're right. He was kind of a sidekick for Bobby Heenan. In fact, if I remember right, I believe he started off, he was just a member of the studio audience. I kind of think of how that started. Or he can give us some more information on that one. And as far as the match where he managed the Bushwhackers, well, now that the thing is back online and working well, we can go on the WWE Network, find that pay-per-view, and take a look at it for ourselves and, watch Jameson's pay-per-view debut. Because, as I said, and I'm sure David's been excited about this, as of, I believe, last Thursday, the network finally, we'll say Dookie under control, and it's actually running well. There's been no crash issues. There have been no login issues. I watched an entire pay-per-view the other night. So now I can give an honest opinion of the network because I'm actually able to watch it. And I know you've been watching it.
Hold on before you do that. It's really weird. Last Thursday night, NXT Arrival, it crashed. The whole feed went down when Tyler Breeze made his entrance to wrestle Xavier Woods, Consequences Creed, as he was in TNA. And the whole feed went down, and everybody's pissed. Everybody, oh, my God, it went down right before Adrian Neville defeated Bo Dallas. His Bo Leavers apparently were not Bo leaving that night in a ladder match for the NXT Championship. Adrian Neville wins the title. It's a big deal. Shawn Michaels is in the ring before the match. John Cena's in the ring after the match, after NXT Arrival goes off the air. So everybody's mad as hell, including me, including the co-host. I'm mad as hell. Michael, thankfully, was at work, but he was reading about all this, and he's Facebooking me going, here we go. And then about an hour later, which is, when you think about it, it's 9 o'clock Central Standard Time or 10 o'clock, I'm reading where there was an update, a software update on Roku for the WWE Network. And I was like, you know what? It's not going to work. But you know what? I'll humor myself. So I went ahead and I pushed the update through myself. And my wife and my son had already fallen asleep. So I went back and watched Chris Benoit versus Kevin Sullivan. People can say whatever they want. It's one of my most favorite matches of Great American Bash 1996, mainly because they beat the crap out of each other. And number two, Dusty Rhodes flips out when there's a woman in the man's bathroom during the Great American Bash. He loses it, and it's worth watching just for that reason alone. And I got to finish the entire match. And once that happened, I was like, okay, this is really cool. And like you, Michael, I have been able to watch a whole lot of stuff. So, yeah, the network is working, but it's really, I don't know if it's ironic that it happened right after there was a major crash during NXT Arrival. It's comical.
See, now, you were having a problem with that. I was at work, as you said. I was actually able to watch the ladder match on my Android phone. So I don't know if it came back on by that point in time. Was it out for the entire ladder match?
I tried. I tried everything. I tried to pull it up on my Samsung Galaxy tablet, and it went back to even though the ladder match was live in the ring, my Roku would not pick up. It would come on for like a 30. Excuse me. No, I'm 10 seconds. Then it would freeze and go right back to the screen. I tried it on my Samsung Galaxy tablet. It went back to Tyler Breeze and then froze. I went into the WWE app on my Android phone. It went back to Tyler Breeze and froze. Finally, at the finish of the ladder match, we were able, my brother-in-law lives next door to me. My brother-in-law came over. So I was able to get it up on my phone and on my tablet. It was at 2 different points during the match. And then I was able to get it up on my Roku. So we were watching on 3 different devices, and it was during different points of the same match. So, yeah, whack. Whack, whack. And I don't mean bushwhack, just whack, period.
Right, yeah. Like I said, I watched it on my Android phone. It seemed to be working. I thought maybe Android was working, the others weren't. Now, you mentioned the Galaxy tab. There is still one little issue there. I don't know if you're having this problem, but you can watch live, but when I try to watch video on demand, I get a black screen. I hear the sound, but I don't get a picture.
Okay. The only thing I can suggest to people is tweet. There's a Twitter handle at @WWE Network, and it seems to be the support Twitter for WWE Network. Tweet at them any problems that you're having, because I tweeted at them nonstop last Monday and I believe Tuesday, maybe even Wednesday. They got back to me day before yesterday and said, hey, how's it working? And I tweeted, it's fine. However, on some of the events, namely Fully Loaded 2000, when I click on it, it takes me completely out of the WWE Network screen and takes me back to the Roku home screen. So there is still issues with certain events. I know they will be cleared up. You know, as everybody has said, this is a huge undertaking. Pardon the pun. This is a huge undertaking for the WWE. There was going to be issues. My concern, like everybody else's now, is, you know, for so long the live channel was kicking butt, but now, you know, NXT happened and there was an issue. I know Main Event Live was on last night. I watched it entirely and didn't have a problem. My concern is if over 1 million people are logged in to watch WrestleMania live, is there going to be another issue? I know Main Event is going to be live every week leading up to WrestleMania. I hope that there won't be an issue during WrestleMania, because that would be really tragic, because that was a big selling point. You know, last week we were talking about the video on demand was a big selling point. Well, now we're back saying video on demand's working with a few issues. It's not flawless, but for the most part it's working pretty well. Now the live feed, maybe with more people watching, seems to be the issue. So hopefully it's cleared up, and hopefully by WrestleMania everything is tip-top.
Yeah, that would definitely be the hope. I'm going to play the coward, unfortunately. I'm going to order it on my cable just to play it safe. I have a WrestleMania party every year. I don't want everybody over here. I fire up the box, and all of a sudden the WWE Network just goes. So I'm hoping that if we can watch it on the live feed, great. I'm going to back it up. I'm going to make sure I have it on my cable box just in case.
That's
I'm
smart.
a little.
That's smart.
That's a lot of people. Like you said, a lot of people are going to be logging in.
You're going to make the WWE even more happy because you're giving them pay-per-view money and you're a subscriber of the network. So they're really going to be happy with you.
Like I said, I'm playing it smart. Now, if it was the Extreme Rules pay-per-view next month, all right. If I can't watch it live, no problem. I always watch that a couple of days later anyway.
Right.
I'll just watch it on the replay.
Right.
No big deal.
Well, I think with any other pay-per-view, there wouldn't be an issue, but WrestleMania is generally, people may not watch any pay-per-view for the entire year, but they're going to watch WrestleMania. So, yeah, you're right.
Now, I'm going to segue here for a second because I don't know if you know about this yet. I did hear this on Facebook. We're talking about WrestleMania. Rob Schamberger had an announcement on his Facebook earlier today. I told him we'd mention this on the air. He is going to be painting live at WrestleMania Access and selling original paintings. So Rob was a guest on our show just a few weeks ago, but he's going to be at WrestleMania Access this year. He'll be doing paintings right there in front of all the fans, in front of all the crowd, in front of all the wrestlers, and selling original paintings. He made that announcement earlier today. So we'll definitely have to see about getting Rob on here again after WrestleMania to kind of talk about that experience.
That is super cool. That is very cool. I did mention it on my page and on the IHWE Facebook page, and I also mentioned it on Twitter. Rob's a really good friend of ours. He has donated, we had him on the show a few weeks ago. He donated work to the Texas Wrestling Hall of Fame. He's donated to countless charities, countless organizations, the College Rally Club, the Dan Gable Luzez Hall of Fame in Waterloo, Iowa. He's currently involved in a WrestleMania charity raffle auction with Mick Foley. He's a hell of a guy. And not to mention he's a great artist. He's very talented. He's very passionate. And he's just a great guy altogether. This is huge. Congratulations to Rob. Now the worldwide WrestleMania fan base that comes in every year from all points of the world and see Rob paint right there in person, and you can take home a piece of history. I've been to WrestleMania Access. It's fantastic. And he just got better with Rob Schamberger being involved. So congratulations, Rob. You deserve it, my friend.
Most definitely. Congratulations to Rob. That is an awesome opportunity. He will be at this year's CAC reunion, so I'll be sure to catch up with him and probably be bringing home some more artwork. Last year I brought home about 4 pieces. But as far as news goes today, though, there's been news popping up everywhere, wrestling-wise, the last couple of days. We all know on Monday it was announced Paul Bearer will be going into the WWE Hall of Fame. We'll talk about that a little bit later. I just wanted to mention that one up. Congratulations to the family and all that. I understand his sons will be there to accept the honor and all that and have a speech in behalf of their father, so that's going to be something to check out. But there's something else in the news. I woke up this morning, I go to my Facebook, I'm looking to see what's going on in the real world outside, before I have to get up and start my day. Looking through, come across TMZ. TMZ always has some good stories. And I hear famed wrestler Buff Bagwell, I'm a successful gigolo now. That was in the headlines of today's TMZ main page. Buff Bagwell, world-class, World Championship Wrestling, the NWO, we all remember Buff the Stuff, Vicious and Delicious with Scott Norton, is now working as a gigolo for a company called Cowboys for Angels. Now, I'm not going to promote this group. You can find out how to contact them yourselves. If you want a night with Buff Bagwell, that's fine with me. We're not going to give you the numbers. We're not going to give you the promotion. I will tell you, though.
Watch him on the network. Watch him on the network. If you want a night with Buff Bagwell, watch him on the network.
I will give you this, though, and this is the part I think is great. They have his prices here, and for a full week with Buff Bagwell, $25,000, $8,000 for a weekend, $3,000 for an overnight visit, $800 for 2 hours, or $1,550 for 4. Now, ladies and gentlemen, as he just said, spend $9.99 a month on the WWE Network, and Buff Bagwell will be right there live and in person on your big screen TV. Watch him that way.
I have a question.
$100 for 2 hours with Buff Bagwell. You have a question. Yes.
If Buff can't make it, does Judy Bagwell call whoever paid him to come and give him the reason why?
There actually was a mention about Buff's mother earlier that they did make the Judy Bagwell reference. I don't know.
Well, there's a story with this. When Buff Bagwell comes to work for WWE, when they bought WCW, everybody remembers the match he had with Booker T on Raw, and Vince McMahon lost it. Everybody remembers that. Jim Ross on the Legends of Wrestling Roundtable goes on to say he was head of talent relations, and that either that week or the week after or a couple weeks down the line, Buff doesn't make a shot. Judy Bagwell calls up Jim Ross at Titan Tower and tells him that Buff can't make it. Buff's not feeling well. JR says, all right, well, this will be the last time me and you have a conversation about your son. Shortly thereafter, Buff was released. And I'm paraphrasing. This is all secondhand. I wasn't there. I'm not trying to. But I've heard that from many different sources. So that's why I made that joke. It was just a joke. Don't anybody get mad. It was just a joke. If Buff can't make it, Judy Bagwell will call whoever paid the money and tell them why. Michael, I believe we have a caller on the air.
Hey guys,
yes, we do.
Jameson. How are we doing?
Jameson. What's up, brother?
Hey, good. How you guys doing?
Doing good.
We're doing good. Just we're talking about Buff Bagwell for a minute, but we're gonna switch gears a little bit. So
Jameson has drawn more money than Buff Bagwell, so let's get Jameson on here.
But can Jameson get $25,000 for a week?
I would pay Jameson $25,000 a week before I'd pay Buff Bagwell.
And I would take
I
it.
probably would too.
But Jameson was Bobby Heenan's co-host on the Bobby Heenan Show. That's big, baby.
Ladies and gentlemen, right here on IHWE Radio, you heard it. $25,000 a week. Jameson will come visit you.
There you
Better
go.
than Buff Bagwell.
Yes. There will be a screening process. Jameson is a father. We don't want anything to happen to him. It will be a screening process. So, anyway, all right, Michael, take it away. Jameson's valuable on the air. Let's go.
Yes, sir. All right, everybody. Let's go into the show the way we're supposed to. I'd like to welcome Jameson to IHWE Radio. Jameson, thank you for joining us tonight.
My pleasure, guys. My pleasure.
Now, I talked with you earlier today, and I did admit that I was a WCW man back in the day. I didn't watch a lot of the I watched some. So I'm not familiar with a lot of your work. I did look up some of it on YouTube. God bless the YouTube. You can always find what you want on there. So for some of the listeners that might be kind of, like myself, can you tell us a little bit about the origin of the Jameson, Jameson's introduction to the WWF, and just how did you get the job working for World Wrestling Federation?
Well, it all started out, I was doing stand-up, and friends of mine started a theater group that did, audience participation murder mysteries, and they asked me to come on as, they were doing a 1920s show, and they needed a vaudeville comic for one of the characters. So I did. I didn't have any desire to be an actor. I was really geared up I wanted to be a stand-up. And after that show ended, the run of that show ended, they wrote a new show, and they wrote this character, Jameson, and wanted me to try doing it. Now, I didn't know I had this inner nerd in me, but I tried it, and it worked out well. I put the glasses on, I crossed my eyes, and Vince McMahon saw the show and, right 2 days later called the theater to see if I'd come down and audition for Bobby Heenan. And that was it. It was as simple as that. It was just, being in the right place at the right time. And, it was a real ball for me. I look back very fondly on those days 20-something years ago.
Jameson, David Fuller here. You've been very nice to me on Facebook. I appreciate it. You've been very kind, especially me being a new father. I appreciate all the kindness.
Yeah, congrats. How's the baby?
Doing well. We watched a lot of wrestling, and he seems to be happy with it, so I'm raising him right.
Yeah, that's great.
So I knew, I was a big WWF fan, so, when you popped up, I was like, oh, who is this guy? And I was just a kid, and it was really cool. So, okay, so you audition, you're coming down to, or you're going to Stanford to audition. They're doing primetime wrestling. They're doing primetime wrestling now. It's kind of a studio show. Bobby was going to do his own show. Now, before this happened, were you a wrestling fan at all? Did you know anything about this? Were you a fan? How did you feel about this?
I was. To a certain extent. As a kid, I grew up watching it. I was a Mil Mascaras fan. I don't know if anybody remembers Mil Mascaras.
Oh, yeah. They started down here in Texas.
Okay, he was like, the real amateur style wrestling. He was a shooter. He used real wrestling moves. There was no,
right.
He did off the top rope and all that stuff too, but he was a really good athlete, and I really enjoyed watching him, and I remember watching George the Animal Steele and Chief J. Strongbow around then, Bob Backlund. And then as I got into my teens and stuff, I kind of lost touch. I wrestled in high school, and I wasn't. I kind of lost touch with through the 70s. I'm old, so. But when Vince McMahon took over, being of the age group where MTV was in its infancy, wrestling was everywhere. The WWF was everywhere. They cashed in on the whole MTV thing, and I just think that the characters, Vince spent a ton of money getting the best talent, and it was hard not to watch. So I kind of I watched enough to know who Vince McMahon was, and so that when he was in the audience that night, I recognized him. I knew who he was. But I was never really a diehard. I was never, more as a kid.
So you get the job with, Vince sees you at the comedy show. He brings you on to audition for Bobby. You're going on to do the Bobby Heenan show. You started off, the gimmick was as a member in the studio audience, right?
Right, correct.
And then Bobby just kind of...
Wait. The Bobby Heenan show, they actually brought me in as, a NASA scientist that I was going to be one of his guests on the show. When the Bobby Heenan show went off the air, they stuck me in as an audience member on primetime. But I thought the Heenan show was great. I was kind of surprised I think USA pulled the plug on it, the network.
Now, I'm a huge Bobby Heenan. I think Bobby's awesome. What was it like to work with Bobby on the Bobby Heenan show and just in general? I've never had a chance to meet him. I'd love to. But what was it like working with him?
He was great. He was such a pro. He off camera, he was very supportive and complimentary. He didn't, no airs. He was just a great guy, a guy that, you go fishing with or sit in a bar with, just a regular guy. But on air, he just played that heel, like nobody ever did. Always had a quick response, always had a funny one-liner up his sleeve. I mean, he was just, a pro from every angle, and he made everybody on the broadcast better than they would have been if Bobby wasn't there. He just brought out the best of everybody. I don't have a bad word to say about the guy. He was just a total pro and a very good friend.
I have a statement and a question. My statement is this, folks. Jameson on the Bobby Heenan show, I remember the Bobby Heenan show like it was yesterday because I've watched it since then. Jameson went on with Bobby Heenan, and, I mean, I should have known that this guy was in show business because he hung with Bobby. I mean, him and Bobby and Gorilla had the natural chemistry, but Jameson and Bobby had a chemistry too because Jameson would let Bobby tell his jokes. He would respond accordingly. Jameson had the mannerisms, and, you really thought he was this dorky, geeky guy. I mean, he played that to a T. He was so good at it. My question is, one of my fondest memories is primetime wrestling. It was in 1991. It was the studio show. I believe Vince and Bobby were hosting, and you had snuck into the $1 Million Man's dressing room. And you put the $1 million belt on, and you couldn't get it off. So the whole show, DiBiase's looking for his belt. And by the end of the show, Jameson runs out. He's hiding in the audience. I think DiBiase, confronts you, and he tries to attack you. Andre, the Giant, who is one of the greatest icons to ever be in the ring, Andre's there, and somehow Virgil and DiBiase are feuding. So Jameson gets away. DiBiase, I think, grabs the belt at the very end. Andre and Virgil protect you, and then the show ends with Andre spanking Sensational Sherry with his crutch. But, man, so that day, I mean, you're involved in this real big angle that's throughout the show, working with Andre the Giant, which to me, that's as good as it gets in this business. Tell us about that.
Yeah, it was great. I mean, one of the things, they give us the setup of, the storyline for that night. But they don't really, they're looking for you to improv, and I'm sure that's why I got hired. I mean, my improv skills from doing stand-up and doing these audience participation shows, I was, in front of a live audience trading insults 3 times a week. So I was pretty good with improvisation of it all. And, it was great. I mean, it's Andre's another guy that as I was actually a kid when he broke in and started making a name for himself. So, I was just like in awe to be around these people. And by the way, Sensational Sherry was probably on tour my best friend. I mean, we got really close, and Ted's a great guy. I still see Ted at shows from time to time, and he's just one of my favorite people to work with. So it was really good. I mean, all the people that were in it that night, I had some special friendship with in one way or another, or was in awe of, like Andre. But it was just amazing. I mean, they let me, they let me loose to do and say and all that stuff, and it was one of the better shows. One of the, my top 3 or 4 episodes that we shot. It was a great bit.
I want to say this before Michael asks his next question. How much of an impact this guy made. Okay, I was a kid during this. I'm 32 years old. I've been in the wrestling business for a long time. I've met a lot of people, and I've watched a lot of wrestling. But I remember that show, and I haven't seen it since. It's not like the show airs on the network, or it hasn't even been on Classics On Demand. I haven't seen the show since it aired, and I remember it like the back of my hand. That's how much of an impact Jameson made on kids like me. This guy wasn't like Hulkamania. He wasn't the Warrior. He wasn't Macho Man. But he was he was so integral at that time, and he had a great character. Yeah. So, man, you were just, wow. I mean,
I really,
you made a huge impact.
I appreciate that. I really do appreciate that. And, I don't think it's taking me till now really to realize what an impact Jameson had. Like, when I left, understand that I was, doing other acting work besides WWF. So, a lot of my time spent at WWF, it was a job, and there were other jobs out there that I was auditioning for, and I was doing some theater in New York City and stuff. So I never really, until I look back now, and I've gotten all these great, Facebook friends and stuff. I'm just now finding out what an impact Jameson did have on the wrestling audience, from the people that are now like age 30 to 50. It's amazing. I mean, people tell me stories like you just repeated that bit. There are some things that I did that I don't remember doing. I ran into the Warlord, one of these, conventions, and he was talking about the episode where he uses me as a barbell, and Bobby Heenan kept calling me a dumbbell, and I had totally forgotten that. I'd totally forgotten that bit, and wrestling fans are constantly reminding me of things that I did that I've totally, just forgotten. I mean, I probably did some 50 episodes, 50 shows over the course of my 3 years there. But yeah, I really appreciate the kind words. I mean, I'm an entertainer, and that's what I was looking to do. And I know, I wasn't really part of the wrestling fabric, so I kind of had to pick my spots. But it was great. I mean, I have such fond memories, and I wish I appreciated back then the fans as much as I do now. It's just looking back, I don't think I had a clear understanding of just how popular Jameson was while he was on the air.
But you do appreciate it now, Jameson. You do appreciate it now, and there's a lot of people that go throughout the years, and they use wrestling as a stepping stool to get where they're at or to get somewhere farther, and they treat the fans like crap. And you still go to conventions, and I see the love. So, you might not appreciate it then, but you were in the heat, and it was the crazy late 80s, 1990s, and you were just doing your thing. But now, at least you do appreciate it, and you're taking time out of you're a father. And, today you were, on the road with your kid, working on his future, and you're taking the time to call in and speak to us. We appreciate you, that you do appreciate the fans now. It's really, really cool.
Yeah, well, thanks, and I do appreciate them. Probably 3/4 of my Facebook friends are wrestling fans that I've never met, and they're all great people. I mean, what's great is I do eventually get a chance to meet them at one event or another. I do probably 3 or 4 shows a year. And people come up to me, and I recognize them from Facebook. It's pretty funny.
All right, Michael, I've taken over, so go ahead, buddy. I know you got a question.
I was just letting you run with it there for a second, David, because I know that, this is one of the shows you were looking forward to because, you know a lot more about the run of it because, like I said, I was a WCW guy. I got main event once a month, so my exposure with Jameson was, the magazines, and I do still have probably in the back in the office somewhere, the WWF magazine. I know Jameson was on the cover of at least one. I think it was you and King Kong Bundy or something.
Yeah,
Christmas
and Ted and DiBiase, the 3 of us. I think I only made one cover. They might have had me like in a little circle on the cover for something else, maybe leading up to Royal Rumble 91, I think, or 92. I forget. I think 92. I forget which Royal Rumble I was with the Bushwhackers against the Beverly Brothers, but I think maybe a month or 2 before that, they might have had a small little picture of me. I actually did the cover shoot with King Kong Bundy and Ted DiBiase. like a year after I was already out of, the regular telecasts.
Now, you mentioned the Bushwhackers, which brings up my question, actually, is how did that story start? How did you get involved with the Bushwhackers? I know you came to the ring with them. Again, it was against the Beverly Brothers, were managed by the Genius.
It's funny. I think there was like a real tug of war, so to speak, with my character. I think there were Vince, first of all, he was a big fan. I mean, he was great to me. He thought I was the funniest guy, and he really wanted to get me out there and all that. But I think some of the old school guys didn't really see a place for Jameson in the ring, so that when they took Primetime off the air, which was totally a financial, from what I've been told, decision, because they were going through some hard times at that point with the steroid scandal and the sex scandal that came out in Playboy. They were looking to cut out, and that was a very expensive show to produce, the Primetime show, the way they were doing it in the studio. So Raw gave them a chance to just shoot everything at the arenas. So it was almost like free rent. They would get the arena, they'd make tons of money for the arena that night, and they'd shoot all their stuff right there. So we lost that whole magazine show where there's a studio audience, and so they didn't really know what to do with me. And I think that, because Vince was calling the shots and he had the deciding vote all the time, he wanted to try putting me, actually into the ring or outside the ring as a manager or a mascot or whatever. And you got to find the right guys to put me with, or the right guy to put me with. And, the Bushwhackers were as crazy as I was. So it seemed like a good fit. And I think it was. I certainly enjoyed the studio show more than going on tour and doing the wrestling, because I did at times feel out of place. Not being a wrestler, not. Although I was in better shape than some of the guys were back then. I was. Whenever
I've
there
seen
was something
pictures.
physical,
You were a big guy.
Yeah, whenever there was something physical that had to be done, I would always tell these guys, just hit me, throw me, do what you, let's make it look real. I mean, I was all for all of that. But it was just, I kind of understood where some of the old school guys thought maybe, Jameson is not a guy that we should be in the ring. So to answer your question in a roundabout way, I think they put me with the Bushwhackers just because they needed to put me with somebody who didn't, who were as big a knuckleheads as I was, and that's how that all came about.
So with all the interest now in the older stuff nowadays, you got the WWE Network. Every year now they do old school Raw. They've had at WrestleMania, they've had like the gimmick battle royals where they bring guys in, including Jim Cornette, I believe, in a gimmick battle royal. Has there ever been any contact from Vince or anybody to maybe bring you back in for a night as a special attraction thing or something?
No, there has been. And I would definitely do it. I'm really wrapped up in my son's career right now. I mean, that really takes most of my time. But I would definitely love to, probably more than I love to do stuff back then, just in terms of seeing, what a great fraternity, I shouldn't say fraternity, that's sexist, but what a great group wrestling fans are. And I'd love to do it for them. I'd love to do it just for the fun of doing it. I've seen Howard Finkel from time to time at these shows, and he's always said to me he'd love to do a Where Are They Now feature that they have on their website with me. But yeah, I would so be open to doing anything for them. I really would. I'm very grateful to Vince in particular, who always treated me, like people, I know he wasn't the nicest guy to some people and all that, but the guy was nothing but a gentleman to me, very generous, very, so I would jump at a chance to do something.
Okay, if you had to, you were there for 3 years, and I mean, people don't realize how you were doing the Bobby Heenan show. You were an instrumental part of primetime wrestling. You would do different gimmicks at different times with different people. You were a manager of the Bushwhackers. If you had to pinpoint one moment that just was your favorite moment, your favorite, I'll take a line from Jim Ross. What was your favorite piece of business when you worked for the World Wrestling Federation? Your favorite piece of business, what was it?
I probably the primetime episode that the Berserker threw me off the roof of the studio. Because it had a life to it. They continued it the next week, the storyline, and there was a lot of fan mail generated by that episode, and it was funny. I mean, it really was a hilarious bit. I don't know if it's up on YouTube or anything. I have a copy of it still on VHS, but it's really funny. Fuji is on with the Berserker on prime time in there, and the bit is that the Berserker is going to perform a Viking ritual, and Bobby Heenan gets me to volunteer to be in this ritual, which is actually tying me up to a stake and burning me alive. And the Berserker can't get the fire started, so he gets mad. He picks me up, tied to this, this stake, this big piece of wood, and carries me up on the roof and throws me off the roof. And the bit was that I land in a dumpster. And the next week they bring me back in a hospital bed. And it was just really funny. It really worked. Bobby was great, and we worked great together. If you see, there's some really funny stuff going on. Like my hand is supposed to be tied behind my back, and I'll take my left hand out and scratch my head, and then put my arm behind my back again, and and he was cracking up. I had Bobby. That was one of the great things about working with Bobby was I could make him laugh and break character a lot, and they would have to edit stuff out or you reshoot even because I would crack him up, and it was great. I mean, it was that was my goal really when we were together, was to make him laugh, to break character. So and I was able to do it a few times.
So you mentioned the conventions you do. You said about 3 or 4 a year. Have you ever thought about, I mean, we're big supporters of it here on our show. They support as well, is the Cauliflower Alley Club. Have you ever thought about attending one of their Vegas reunions?
I would. I mean, I read about, I didn't know anything about that till I read Bobby's book. But it sounds like, it would be fun to do. I would. I mean, again, my son is at such a critical spot in his career right now. He's going great guns. He just booked his first feature film. So I got to be careful what I commit to doing. But I would definitely, if the time was right, if either my son was doing something in California or something like that, or and I had an opportunity to steal away for a day or two, I would definitely do it.
Well, I can say that June of this year is the reunion, June 2nd, 3rd, and 4th. I'm going to be there representing IHWE Radio, a few other things. And if somehow you were able to work it into your schedule this year or something like that, I would love to bring you, have you as my guest to come with me. We're allowed, so you can come and check out. You'd enjoy it. A lot of people would enjoy seeing you, and you're going to find there's a lot of fans out there that are they're going to remember you. They're going to recognize you. You'd be busy the entire time you were there.
Yeah, listen, let's stay in touch. If I can steal away for a few days, I will. He's tied into this film. It's a great movie for him. It's it's his first feature film, and it's a starring role. It's going to shoot up in Montreal in April and May, and considering that they wrap. When they say they're going to wrap, I probably would have the opportunity to get out there. So we need to stay in touch, and I'll keep you posted with my. You guys know who my son is, right? For your listeners, I'm sure you have some listeners out there that watch football. A very popular commercial on all the football telecasts was the Cam Newton commercial for Play 60 with the little boy who kind of passive-aggressively trash talks him. That little kid, that's my son.
Oh, awesome.
And,
I know that commercial,
yeah, where at the end he's like, I'm just loosening my arm. Where he tells Cam he's going to be his mom's favorite player. That kid, I mean, he's an amazing little kid. He's off to some start. He's already done in 3 years more than I did in my 11 years as an actor. But and this film, it's going to really feature him. It's called Brooklyn. It's going to be out sometime around Thanksgiving or Christmas of this year, and I'm really looking forward to getting him get started on that one.
Well, we'll have to bring you back on, Jameson, as the film progresses, and we'll get an update on when that's coming out. That way our listeners will be on the lookout for it. One last question. I know you're very busy. If you want to say anything to your fans right here, this goes worldwide. You got the floor. If you want to say anything to your fans, go for it.
Yeah, guys, thanks, and girls. And yeah, there's tons of female wrestling fans out there. Yeah, thanks for being fans and supporting me. And so many of you have, introduced yourselves to me in the last couple of years. And I don't know what to say. It's very humbling. I really appreciate all the kind words, and hope I can give you more laughs over the years.
Very good, Jameson. Well, as personally for me, you've been nothing but nice in the conversations we've had. It's an honor. It really is. Like I said, you made a big impact on me as a kid. I really like what you did. It's really cool hearing your story. We're going to have you back on maybe sometime in the summer. And, if I ever do a convention down here in Texas, I don't know when it would be, and if your schedule's free, we'd love to have you down here just so we can hang out. I appreciate you coming on, and we'll be in touch, brother.
All right, sounds good, and likewise, happy to do it.
Have a good one, Jameson. Thank you.
You too. Take care, guys. Bye.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, we'll be right back with more IHWE Radio.
The legends of Mid-South are back. The Mid-South Legends Fan Fest takes place Friday, April 4th in Chalmette, Louisiana at Seeger Center. Cowboy Bill Watt, Jim Cornette, and the Midnight Express, Mr. Wrestling 2, the Rock and Roll Express, and many more are slated for this once-in-a-lifetime event. You'll also see live wrestling featuring the JYD Memorial Cup, Mickie James versus Angelina Love, and a host of others. Get your tickets now. For more info, go to MidSouthLegends.com.
All right, we're back on IHWE Radio. Me and Double M, Michael McCurdy, Encyclopedia World-Class Championship Wrestling creator and author, host of this show. Jameson was just on. Man, what a hell of a story. Such a nice guy. I mean, you grow up watching these guys, and you never know how some of them are going to be. Really nice guy. I'm glad we had him on.
Double M, huh? I like it. I like that. That's good. But, yeah, no, Jameson was a great interview. As I said, I didn't know much about his run in WWF. I know a lot more now, and I will be in touch with him here soon and give him some contact information because I would love to have Jameson come and be a guest of ours at the reunion this year. I think that would be, I think he'd have a good time, like I said. But we're going to move on to a little something here, David. This is an idea of yours. Once again, we're plugging the WWE Network here. We're going to go back every once in a while, ladies and gentlemen, once a week, or at least try once a week. We might skip a week here and there depending on our guests and time. But we're going to go back. We're going to pick out some of our favorite pay-per-views from the bygone days. And we're going to look at them now with a clearer head and a little more, smarts behind us, kind of looking at it. And this week, I got to pick the show. And we're going to talk a little bit about Halloween Havoc 1990, which if anybody was a WCW fan and watching the pay-per-views back at that time, we all know that Great American Bash 1990, Sting won the title for Flair. At Halloween Havoc, he was defending it against Sid Vicious, who was a member of the Four Horsemen, along with Flair and Anderson and Barry Windham. This is back when they didn't have pay-per-views every month. You didn't have the Great American Bash and then Hog Wild and then this and then this. You had Great American Bash in June or July, and you had Halloween Havoc in October. Big build-up. Sid versus Sting. That was the big one. This is for the title. We were going to have it. A lot of big points came out of the Halloween Havoc pay-per-view. Some some good, some not very infamous. One of the things that came out at the Halloween Havoc pay-per-view is the Black Scorpion. Black Scorpion was supposed to be this figure from Sting's past that was there to destroy his career, that was there to end his career, to take his title because of what Sting had done to him in the past. And the time was supposed to be, at the time, was Al Perez, was supposed to be the Black Scorpion. So Halloween Havoc 90, you got Sting versus Sid. We had Flair and Anderson versus Doom for the World Tag Team titles. You had Lex Luger versus Stan Hansen for the U.S. title. You had the opening match, Ricky Morton and Tommy Rich versus the Midnight Express with Jim Cornette. This was the Halloween Havoc pay-per-view. You had the Black Scorpion was coming up in there. So David and I sat back. We watched it with our analytical minds. We thought about it. We came up with our reviews of this, and we're going to discuss it a little bit. Now, David, you had a chance to watch this, correct?
I've watched it off and on the past few days, but I remember watching it back in the day, and I remember it pretty vividly, so we should be good to go.
All right. Now, one of the things, you and I were talking a little bit earlier while watching this, opening match of this show, at least the opening match of the version that I saw on the network, because unbeknownst to me, the network does not show the complete pay-per-views in some cases. This was the Turner Home Video version of Halloween Havoc 1990. And if anyone remembers, Turner Home Video did the WCW pay-per-views. Coliseum Home Video was the home of the WWF. Coliseum Home Video would release the shows in full for the most part. They edited a couple things here and there, not too bad. Turner Home Video would butcher these shows. They'd take a 3-hour show, turn it into a 2-hour block. So unfortunately, what we saw was on the network was the 2-hour Turner Home Video version. I did watch it back in 1990 when it first aired. My memory is a little cloudy. I'm, getting up there in years. I've got 3 kids. I tend to forget things a lot. So we're going to kind of go off what I can remember from the 90 version and from the Turner Home Video version. The opening match of this show on the network version was Tommy Rich, Ricky Morton versus the Midnight Express, because I believe the storyline was Robert Gibson had been attacked the week prior and was unable to wrestle, so Wildfire was going to be his partner, and they were facing the Midnight Express, as I said, with James E. Cornette. And I'm watching this match, and it was an okay match. It was, Midnight Express, one of the greatest tag teams, in wrestling. Ricky Morton, one half of the Rock and Roll Express, another one of the greatest tag teams in wrestling. And then you got Wildfire Tommy Rich, was a former NWA heavyweight champion, did know how to hold his own, had a great feud with Buzz Sawyer. So, it was a good matchup. During the match, and I'm talking to David about this, Ricky Morton does the flying head scissors, and for some unbeknownst reason to me, Jim Ross, who's not quite at the par of we know as JR yet. In fact, his commentary for Halloween Havoc 90 kind of sucks. sorry, JR, I'll see you in June at the Cauliflower Alley, so if you want to yell at me then, that's okay. But he refers to it as a Japanese head scissors from Ricky Morton. Have you ever heard of Japanese head scissors there, David? We were talking about this. I don't know where Japanese head scissors came from.
I think he Scott Steiner was doing the Frankensteiner, and I'm pretty sure it was not the same, but a little altered, modified version. And JR probably just put Japanese head scissors on it because maybe he saw it in Japan before, and in the heat of the moment, he probably just said, "Okay, Japanese head scissors." And a lot of times when people don't understand a move or never seen a move before, they'll just say, "Oh, Japanese such and such, the Japanese obliterator, the Japanese annihilator, Japanese wrist lock." It happens. So
Japanese obliterator. I want to see that move. That's like Godzilla.
I believe Hayabusa and Onita had that match in FMW back in the late 90s with the firework and the particular part of the body after the match. But we're not going to get into that here. Real quick, if you want to go match by match, that's fine. I'll tell you what I remember from this show. And one of I don't know if this was the first or the second match. I don't even know if it's on the network's version. The Nasty Boys and the Steiner brothers had a tag team match. It might have been for the United States tag team belts. It's the best match the Nasty Boys have ever had. It's not a knock on Knobs and Sags. They were good at what they did. But they got thrown around like rag dolls. The crowd was off the chain. And it's the best match that the Nasty Boys have ever had. So if for any reason, for the biggest reason I can tell you to watch this show, if you want to see the Nasty Boys have a 4-star match and you didn't think it was possible because that's not what the Nasty Boys do, watch this match with Rick and Scott Steiner because it is awesome.
Yeah, the Rick and Scott Steiner versus the Nasty Boys actually do make the Turner Home Video version. I don't plan on going match for match. There's just some things that happened to stick in my head that I remembered. Japanese head scissors, one of them. Jim Ross being at the level of JR that we know now. But the Turner Home Video version actually had the Tommy Rich and we had the Steiners and the Nasty Boys. We had Flair and Anderson versus Doom. We had Luger versus Hansen. We had Sting versus Sid. Obviously, you're going to be kind of hard-pressed to not have your title match. And the Fabulous Freebirds with somebody else I'm going to bring up. The Fabulous Freebirds versus the Renegade Warriors, which I believe was Chris and Mark Youngblood. That match is on there. But the Fabulous Freebirds, this is somebody else I'm going to bring up for a second, had a guy with him, Little Richard Marley. Little Richard Marley was...
Bad Street?
No, it wasn't Bad Street. Bad Street would have been Brad Armstrong in the mask. No, Little Richard Marley. Remember Rocky King, the skinny black guy with the fro that basically got his butt handed to him every night on WCW Saturday night? He was the guy that made everybody else look good.
There's a lot of people like that, so I don't remember him specifically. There was a lot of guys like that. Mark Starr, the Gambler.
Rocky King was along the lines of, your Sandy Beach and all the other names. Rocky King was one of those guys you kind of remembered. But he worked with the Freebirds while as their roadie or their gopher, and he worked as Little Richard Marley.
Okay.
So Little Richard Marley was on there. The Freebirds get the win over the Renegade Warriors. But what brought my attention, because I wasn't paying attention to this during the first match, was when the Freebirds come out, they come out to some god-awful canned theme music, because I don't think now the WWF has the rights to play the music, or Turner Home Video didn't have the rights to it. I don't know which.
No, let me cut you off. There's an ongoing lawsuit right now with Jimmy Pappas and WWE. Jimmy Pappas supplied a lot of the theme music for WCW at the time. So there's an ongoing lawsuit between the two entities, Jimmy Pappas and More Wrestling Entertainment. Jimmy Pappas did do a lot of the music for WCW, I believe, during that time, and they have used it before, and he has taken them to court asking for royalties. So I believe that is still being overseen and still being decided on by a court. So I believe until that is decided, and if it's decided in his favor, I believe some of that music will be edited simply because an agreement has not been reached between the two entities yet.
And this, ladies and gentlemen, is why David and I work so well together as a team, because the little things I don't know, I can trust that he's going to have some little factoid of information. He's kind of like Cliff Clavin. Remember Cliff Clavin from Cheers? Always knew a little bit about everything.
I remember Cliff. He was on Toy Story. I believe he was the pig on Toy Story. The pig.
Yeah, you would remember him as the pig from Toy Story.
Anyway, I remember Cheers. I used to watch Woody Harrelson, Christy Alley, Ted Danson, George Wendt, Norm. I remember Cheers, brother. Don't even try. Everybody knows your name. Everybody is the same. Got it. Let's talk Stan Hansen and Lex Luger. Stan Hansen was already a major star in Japan. Here's a case of WCW needing a man to make the talent and the title. Stan didn't need to come over to America. He was already a big star in Japan. He was making more than some Major League Baseball players were making, as Jim Ross has stated in multiple interviews. So Stan comes over and does this program with Lex Luger because they're trying to gear Luger up to be the next guy to take over Flair's spot. So they brought in Stan Hansen. They had a little feud. I don't think it went to where WCW wanted it to, but that's a case of WCW not knowing what they have. I don't have anything against Lex Luger. I don't think Lex Luger is as bad as people make him out to be. But I think Stan Hansen would have been better challenging for the heavyweight title. I think Jim Herd was running WCW. We've all heard some of the ideas that Jim Herd had over the years. So I don't believe that Stan was used correctly in the program with Luger. He held the U.S. title, didn't need it, but that's a case of Stan Hansen making that belt better because he was already a major star in Japan. So that match happened, and then in the main event, Doom worked Flair and Anderson, which was really weird at the time because it was two heel tag teams, you know. And but that was really good for Butch Reed and Ron Simmons. It gave them the rub, working Flair and Arn. Flair and Arn were the baby faces of the match because, you know, it was Flair and Arn. And they were getting cheered in some parts of the country when they were the ultra heels because they were cool. They were the horsemen. They were limousine riding, jet flying, kid stealing, styling, and profiling. That's what the horsemen was. So they would get cheered in some places, depending on where they were. And then in the main event, Sting and Sid, I never had a problem with Sid. I thought Sid was good for what Sid did. If you ever expected Sid to go out there and tear the house down with just anybody, you're an idiot. Sid was good for what Sid did. Huh?
Run, yell, kick. That's what my friends and I would refer to Sid. He would run, he yelled, and he kicked. That's about what Sid did, but he did it really well. Sid was a big time. Big men weren't that prominent yet.
Right. So Sid went for the belt against Sting, a perfectly logical program. People like to hate on the finish. Like, oh, that's such a stupid finish. I don't think it was a stupid finish. I just don't think it was done correctly. I think something went wrong. It was actually pretty creative because Barry Windham cut off his hair or wore a wig and looked exactly like Sting, except he's taller than Sting. And when he gets in the ring, there's obviously a difference because Sting had just gone 10, 12, 15 minutes with Sid. He's covered in sweat. Barry Windham comes out taller, and Barry Windham has this way of walking. He kind of lumps down. I remember it very vividly, and I'm like, that's not Sting. But, I mean, it was when Sting comes out, and he was tied up. He comes back in the ring and wins the title. It was really screwy the way they did it. But had they had maybe thought that out, it looked like something they booked the day of. Had they had thought that out a little better, I think it would have worked better. It's pretty creative if you think about it. That's what heels would do. And then the Al Perez Black Scorpion, the story is Al Perez was going to be the Black Scorpion, but he didn't want to put Sting over, which, again, this is just what we're getting from folks. It's not us saying Al Perez wouldn't do business. We don't know what the story was. We weren't there. We were kids, but that's the story that's been put down. I don't know what the where they were going with that. I know they went with Flair. That's not what they wanted to do, and it turned out to be a big flop. Again, not a bad idea. Black Scorpion. Yeah. Go ahead,
according to Gary Hart, from his autobiography, which in my opinion is probably one of the greatest books written about wrestling, that was the case. Al Perez, along with not wanting to job to Sting, also had some extracurricular activities, unfortunately, like some of the boys did back then. So he kind of gives a little more light to the Al Perez story. Now, the problem with the Black Scorpion angle, though, and but I do want to make a comment about the Barry Windham situation with the finish of the other match, but we'll talk about the Black Scorpion for a second. It was a great idea to have the man from Sting's past, and it came out, and he had this black magic, or the magic spell tricks he did and stuff like that. But he had the awful piped-in voice, which I'm pretty sure was probably somebody backstage, kind of like the Shockmaster.
I think it was Ole Anderson. I think he was the same guy who did the Shockmaster.
He did the Shockmaster voice. They would just have this voice back there. They would talk like this. And that was supposed to be evil and mysterious. Yeah. But the Black Scorpion, he comes out, he's got the issue. At Halloween Havoc, live on pay-per-view, when all the world is watching, however many people were watching the pay-per-views back then, because in the early 90s, it wasn't a big market. Wrestling was kind of at a low. But they bring out the Black Scorpion, and he does his Sting, the black magic of the blah, 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 and he's doing his thing. He pulls a girl out of the audience, takes her up onto the stage, goes behind this curtain. It's got a little scaffolding. There's a curtain. He pulls the girl back, and she's screaming. And they pull the curtain shut, and all of a sudden there's like some fireworks. It just goes off. And then he mysteriously reappears on the other side of the stage, and the girl runs off the stage and jumps into Sting's arms and starts to chase after the Black Scorpion. But when you watch it now, you look at it, and you can see the Black Scorpion goes behind the curtain, and it shakes and it rattles and it poof with the little fireworks. And then you can tell that he just goes back behind the backdrop, walks over to the other side of the stage, comes out, and the girl's, and runs off. But you got Jim Ross selling this like Chris Angel just levitated from the top of the Mirage to the top of this hotel in Reno. He just traveled states. But it was horrible looking. The angle was a good idea, but the execution was bad. Because back then they didn't have
Had Vince been doing that, it would have looked a whole lot better. When they got it right, when they essentially kind of did the same angle, but they got it right, a year later, when they did the WCW Phantom, and that turned out to be Rick Rude. They got it right then. And they also had it really cool when they brought out the big gift boxes, and Cactus Jack came out through one of them, and Abdul the Butcher came out. And, so they did get it right. They just waited a couple of years to pretty much do the same scenario, because all the underlining things in all these was they needed somebody to go after Sting. So, yeah, you're right. It was just, had Vince been doing it, because 1990 Vince is doing Warrior as the champion. The Undertaker was going to start the next month. This is October. Undertaker was going to start in November. The Warrior's the champion. Hogan just came back working an earthquake. So, and Vince started doing some of that hocus pocus stuff with the Undertaker and Papa Shango a few months later. So I think Vince had been doing it because of smokes and mirrors. But I mean, you got to be able to do the smoke and mirrors correctly, So, yeah,
there was smoke with mirrors.
It's really weird, man.
And unfortunately, it killed the Black Scorpion angle. So to watch this on Halloween Havoc, even then, I was watching it like, what? Oh, okay. And you got Raw. The magic of the Black Scorpion. Like I said, Jim Ross was not at the top of his game yet. He was great, but he wasn't at the top where he is now, as we know, right. Good old JR. But it was so hard to sell that angle, and in my opinion, the Black Scorpion just kind of died before it really had a chance to get started, because even if Al Perez had been the Black Scorpion, it had been somebody different, they really screwed it up with the girl and running behind
the problem with Al Perez is, as good as Al Perez was, you're going to bring a guy on TV that nobody knows. He wasn't on WCW. I don't think he was. And I mean, even if he was, he wasn't a main event guy on their television. He had done some stuff down here. He was a big money player. He was a big money player in Florida. But if you're going to bring a guy onto national television, WTBS, you know, if Al Perez was the guy, people would have just been like, who is this? I mean, maybe they could have turned that into something later, but, you know, I think people kind of would have been shrugging their shoulders. Nothing against Al Perez. He just, if you bring an unknown on the television, this big reveal, people are going to be let down simply because they don't know who the person is. And what's the biggest deal in wrestling? If people don't know who you are, they don't react to you right away. So.
Most definitely, you know, and then, like I said, we all know the ending of this Black Scorpion angle happened to Starrcade because, like I said, they didn't have monthly pay-per-views. So you had to go clear until December with more of the Black Scorpion and Stu talking and I think he made like a Bengal tiger appear at the Clash of Champions and some other things. And then they had the big reveal at Starrcade where there were multiple Black Scorpions. I think there's like 5 or 6. They all came down from a big giant spaceship and all came out. And in the end, the Black Scorpion had a silver mask on. Dick the Bruiser was the most
ineffective referee in the history of referees.
Most definitely. Starrcade 90 is definitely one of the pay-per-views we're going to have to talk about also, so we can kind of finish up the Black Scorpion angle, because I watched that one, and like I said, the big spaceship, and everybody opened up, and Dick the Bruiser blew as a referee. But back to Halloween Havoc. You mentioned Barry Windham.
By the way, nothing against Dick the Bruiser. He was a senior at that. He was a senior at that time, and he could barely move because he had beaten up people for the last 55 years. So nothing against Dick the Bruiser.
Oh, exactly. Nothing against Dick the Bruiser. I have nothing bad to say about, you know, Jim Ross either. Like I said, I see him every year in Vegas. He's a great guy. I'm just saying at this point in time, wasn't there. I mean no ill will towards anybody, mainly because I don't want anybody to meet me in the back of a, you know, dark alley or anything, because I'm kind of a pansy and I don't fight very well. But back to Halloween Havoc, back to Sting versus Sid. Barry Windham comes out. There are multiple problems with Barry Windham coming out, because you had the match going on, the Sting's fight, and you mentioned the sweat. His face paint was gone, because that was back when you had that weird grease paint that just peeled off in like little chunks. You didn't have like the cream makeup like Dempson had. His peeled off in little strips with bits and pieces of color. He fights to the back with Sid, you know, or Sid runs to back. Sting goes after him. Flair and Aaron are out there with the referee to distract him. I believe it was Nick Patrick. Could have been him or Randy Anderson. I can't remember which at this point. But
tomato.
Exactly. Sid comes out. Here comes Sting. He goes to body slam Sid, falls back, goes for the pin. 1, 2, 3, Sid's the world champion. Here goes the fireworks. Here come the balloons. Because for some reason in WCW, whenever you won a title, they dropped the balloons. These are orange and black.
They had balloons for a heel champion.
They had balloons for a heel champion. Yeah, the title won, and there's balloons. But when he comes in and out, first thing you notice is Sting's about, I believe, 6'3". You know, Barry Windham's like 6'7". You know, he's tall. He's lean.
He's very
Sting's
tall.
muscular.
He's about as tall as Sid is, because they were a tag team.
Yeah, and he's a body. And Sting was into the bodybuilding, so he had like muscle. He had like, you know, you could see definition. Barry Windham has never had definition in his life, ever.
No.
Barry Windham has always been a very tall, lanky guy. Another thing, and this is something because I'm watching it on the network. I got my wife sitting with me. I said, "Here, I want you to watch this." She's watching it. The one thing she notices that maybe another casual fan would notice is Sting was doing the California Surfer gimmick thing from Venice Beach, California, and all that. He had a rat tail. Remember the rat tail?
Right. I remember that.
Barry Windham comes out, no rat tail.
Right.
Not even the same hair tail. And she's like, "Where's his rat tail?" I'm like, "Exactly." She goes, "Who's that?" And I said, "That's Barry Windham." "What?" I'm like, "Exactly." She saw it for the first time, was just as confused as I was back in 1990 when I saw it. And then when they go back
to confuse people, right? And that's fine to confuse people, but yeah, it was just, you know, you don't want to. I don't know. It's really hard to word. You know, I don't, because it was, like I said, if you sit back and think about it, it's not the worst thing we've ever seen. It's not even the worst thing we've ever seen from WCW. But it's pretty creative.
Oh, God, no. No.
I don't think they spent enough time on the drawing board with it. Say, okay, let's, maybe Flair, I think, would have been more believable as Sting. And I know he just worked, but, I mean, you could have had that match earlier in the night. I think there were things they could. I mean, Jim Herd wanted Flair to cut his hair. Jim Herd wanted Flair to wear an earring. Jim Herd wanted Flair to be called Spartacus. Why not make him Sting?
Jim Herd wanted to make a wrestler called the Hunchback. Jim Herd, we could have an entire show.
The Ding Dongs. The Ding Dongs.
The Ding Dongs from
the Ding
Bellevue, with the cowbells. And we could have an entire show on the Jim Herd fiascos. I mean, this was bad. I mean, we had the Ding Dongs. He wanted to do the Hunchback. And if anybody wants to know what the Hunchback was, he thought this was a great gimmick because nobody would ever be able to pin him because he's a Hunchback. So he could never put his shoulders to the mat. That was the gimmick. He'd be undefeated.
That's pretty funny.
He would have been like...
I'm surprised Vince didn't think of that. And anybody who wants to say that's why Vince was smarter, Vince gave us Bastion Booger. I watched Flyer Ferguson the other day on Raw. He gave us Mantar. So this was a big thing. I mean, terrible gimmicks and terrible ideas were a big thing in the 80s and the 90s. I mean, there were some real winning ideas, but there was some... I'm surprised WCW didn't go under quicker, especially during this period. I think Turner had just taken over WCW. Maybe that's probably the only reason why they didn't go under. And they were going through some real issues. But they had good people. They had Sting, they had Flair, they had Double A, they had Doom, they had Barry Windham. Again, Michael was talking about Barry Windham. Barry Windham was never a body. He was more a worker. Could go with anybody, could hang with anybody. He just wasn't a body, and there's nothing wrong with that. There's plenty of guys who were never bodies. Double A, never a body. Tully Blanchard, never a body. But those guys would go in the ring every night and go 30, 45 minutes with just about anybody on the card. So,
and Arn Anderson and Blanchard were never supposed to impersonate Sting, who had a body. So,
right.
Obviously, Barry Windham was a logical choice. He was blonde, but...
Okay. All right, Michael. Well, let's wrap
this up.
How
F9 was just bad.
Yeah. But Steiners and the Nasty Boys, if there's a saving grace, watch that because the Nasty Boys have the match of their lives. Okay, next week, I am working on something really big. In addition to Gorgeous Gary Young, who's a big guest on his own, I'm working on something very big. I was hoping to have the announcement tonight. Not going to happen. Check the IHWE Facebook, and as soon as I can make the announcement, I will. Next week's going to be a big show. It's counting down the days to the Hall of Fame. So make sure you're with us next week, right here, same time. Gorgeous Gary Young is going into the Hall of Fame, and I will have a pay-per-view to review next week with Michael. I get to pick, and I've been watching a lot of WCW, a lot of really bad WCW. We're talking uncensored. So we could have a field day next week. So, but anyway, I'm going to let Michael close out the show. You can find me at HXC Fuller on Twitter. Follow the Facebook page at IHWE Pro Wrestling. Next Saturday is the Texas Wrestling Hall of Fame here in Fort Worth. Next week we have Gorgeous Gary Young, and I hope to have another guest to join Gary. I'm working on something. It's going to be a great show no matter what. So, Michael, take us off.
All right. I'm looking forward to seeing what the big announcement is. I'm always held in the dark a little bit. I kind of have an idea, but we'll see what happens. It's going to be a good show anyway with Gorgeous Gary Young. You can find me on Facebook at facebook.com/Encyclopedia World Class. I'm on Twitter at EncycloWCCW. And just to kind of give you guys a little heads up, I'm working on a couple special shows coming up in the month of May. We got a little ways to go. We got shows booked in March and April. But we're going to be doing a special Portland wrestling tribute in May. I made some calls, got some good friends of mine. We're going to talk Portland wrestling history. For those of you who don't know anything about Portland wrestling or don't know a lot about it, that was where guys like Jesse Ventura, Sergeant Slaughter, Colonel De Beers, Playboy Buddy Rose, Raven, just lots of guys. Maniac Matt Bourne. Lots of guys you saw in the WWF, the WCW, ECW, they all went through the Portland territory. It was a big territory back in the time. So we're going to have a special show on that one. And just a couple days ago, I was able to confirm it. David and I are in the works. We're putting this together. In the month of May, we are going to have a special show for, well, we'll say the fellas out there who grew up in the 80s, or boys in the 80s. I'm sure you watch this. We are going to have some of the gorgeous ladies of wrestling on in May. David and I are going to sit down. Awesome. We're going to have a show with the Glow Girls. So that is going to be something definitely to look forward to. I'm sure David's all excited.
I just watched the documentary. I just watched the documentary not too long ago. It's one of the best documentaries I've ever seen. It's awesome. Big Bad Mama passed away a few months ago. She was awesome. She was on Married with Children. She was one of my favorites. I was glad to see that they all got together, especially for people like Mountain Fuji. That's awesome. So I'm glad. Gorgeous Ladies of Wrestling, big hit, big pop culture thing back in the 80s, folks. Those girls really did put their mark on the business, and we're honored to have them on. They were a big part of the boom period in the late 80s of professional wrestling. So it's going to be an honor to have them on.
Yes, they were. And like I said, that's going to be a great show. As the weeks go on, I'll give you some more information on guests and all that. But we are going to wrap up tonight's episode of IHWE Radio. We'd like to thank Jameson for coming on tonight. He was a great interview. Look forward to having him on again sometime. And best of luck on his son's career. Sounds like he's doing great there in the acting business. So for David and myself, we're going to wish you good night, and we'll see you next week.